One of the continued fallacies about the Christian scriptures, especially the Gospels, is the assumption that whenever Jesus speaks, he is predicting or prophesying. A lot of that comes from our misunderstanding of what a prophet was in the Hebrew world, in the world 2,000 plus years ago. And this goes back to the Hebrew scriptures as well, trying to understand and trying to look at that as giving us clues about what will come next, not realizing that what these people are talking about is the going on at that time. So it wasn't a world to come, it was at that time. And so much of what Jesus says is about the time he's in. It has implications absolutely going forward, but it's of his time. So we have to bring that awareness to the Beatitudes, as this passage in Matthew 5 is known. When you look at all the Gospels, this is considered by all scholars, and literary scholars as well as biblical scholars, to be the magnum opus of the Gospel, the central core value. And I'll save you the time to look that up in Google because I've done it. Magnum opus is simply literally Latin for the great work. So the encompassment of everything that Jesus was trying to talk about is in the Beatitudes. Now, there's Beatitudes in Matthew, Beatitudes in Luke. I'm personally a favor of those in Luke. I prefer those, but they're the action oriented. You know, blessed are the poor, bang, do something about it. Blessed are the hungry, bang, do something about it. That's not what Matthew brings us. When Matthew is talking about, or Matthew's Jesus rather, is talking about the poor, the mourning, the struggling, the suffering, he's talking about people already there. And we use the term blessed as some kind of a bit of a distancing language, where the real meaning of the Greek word behind it is people already with God. Now, that's a hard one for us to grasp, especially those of us who live in privilege, whether it's the privilege of gender or nationality or skin tone or identities of other kinds. It's hard for us to grasp that the struggling and the suffering, the marginalized, the people that we're in a society that pushes aside are the ones closest to God's heart. The other part of that is there's no call on us who are a little more comfortable to become the ones who are struggling and suffering. So this is not a moral judgment. This isn't a pathway to you'll be in with God if you start to struggle and suffer. There's no justice in that. There's no holiness in that. We're asked to look at the world as it is. That's what Jesus is asking us. And he's sitting on that mountaintop or that mountainside 2,000 years ago, looking at the people around him and relating to them. He's in northern Galilee. He's in a place where Rome controls everything. Who lives, who dies, where they live, how they earn their money, how much money they can earn. It's all controlled by Rome. These are people without any sense of self-identification, self-governance, taking care of themselves. And they're looking to the temple, they're looking to their faith to explain the world to them, to help them find the promises that God wants. And much like our modern world, they look at the temple and they see that the temple does really, really good by the people who work in the temple, but not necessarily by the people who are on the most vulnerable, on the margins of society. So we have to bring that lens to this. We're listening to Jesus talk about the poor, the disenfranchised, the mourning, the struggling, those who are already with God and God with them. In our modern world, there's essentially three conversations that are happening right now at this time in 2026. There is the conversation about whether women are able to be ordained priests in the Catholic community, where they are using Jesus' physicality as justification to exclude women. Jesus was a man, thereby only priests could be men because priests represent Jesus, which goes completely against the baptismal vows, the baptismal promises that all of us are created equal in God and that we're all made in the image of God. So that's one conversation. Another conversation going on is between those who are very much anti-faith, specifically anti-Christian, and looking to remove any essence of faith language from community spaces, community languages, from any participation in society. One of the places I've noticed that is actually with the Beatitude, with blessed. A friend of mine one time used the word blessed in a post that was meant for this group at large, and they piled on, stumped her. She had no idea that people had that attitude, that blessed was a religious word, therefore it could never be used. Didn't make sense to her. Quite frankly, it doesn't make sense to me either, but that's the conversation going on. Anything that even hints of religion is pushed aside, pushed out, essentially inverting a world where Christianity was at the center. Now it's on the outskirts, and other traditions are marginally more acceptable because they're a little more marginalized, whereas Christianity is seen as the dominant that's got to be kicked out and no more being part of it. So that's conversation number 2. The other conversation is within the Christian umbrella itself, and that is between progressives and right wing. And I'm very careful not to call it conservatives, because conservative Christians have a better grasp of what the Bible actually says than right-wing Christians who are trying to turn Jesus into Rambo and justify all the destruction that's going on, all the killings, all the takeovers, everything nasty happening as God warranted, when it is the exact opposite of the Bible. What all of these groups have in common is they haven't read the scriptures, at least not carefully. So we have that opportunity when we're looking at the Beatitudes. Jesus says, first out of the gate, "Blessed are the poor in spirit." That means those who are struggling, those who are vulnerable, those who are already having to fight essentially for their basics. They're closer to God. They've got a special place in the world of God. God's mercy is there already, and we can watch that. But the twofold part of that is not only are they there, but it's our responsibility as all people of faith, as all humans, in fact, to try to bring something to them, that we give them abundance, the people who are struggling, because quite frankly, it could be us next week. There's no limit on who that is. Blessed are those who are mourning. It's not just people who have recently buried someone. This means people who've lost their jobs, people who've lost their community, people who have lost their families because they have to follow their own path and their family has no room for that. That's particularly true in the queer community. People who are just not with the step of society, who feel like they are outside of it. Blessed are those who are mourning. It's our place to help in their comforting. Blessed are those who seek justice where no justice is. That's a pretty clear one, that we as people of God are always needing to find justice. And the blessed are those who are already struggling with it. I saw something just this past week where it talked about how we as a faith community, or particularly those in the United States as a faith community, have to continue in our peaceful demonstrations to change what's going on, and not engage and basically not have any bloodshed, keep it peaceful. And I responded and I said, well, I hate to tell it to you, but it's already bloodied. Just because those who are socially protected and comfortable are scared of getting dirty, or are not willing to actually get into the fray, it doesn't matter that other people aren't already there, struggling and suffering with the violence that's being aimed at them. There's no such thing as change without a force for those who are in comfortable situations to push back, because the marginalized have been pushing back all along and they've got limited power. But God is already with them. So it's up to us who are not in that category, just try to do things to make things better. There's so many more Beatitudes. I haven't memorized them all, but the message is consistent. Those who are struggling, those who need special attention or special favor, special acknowledgement, are those who are already in God's community, in God's arms, in God's protection almost. And it does not set up an us and them. And we've got to be very careful about that. It's not an us and them. It's that we, as people with a little more comfort, a little more resources, a little more social protections, we now have the fantastic opportunity to step up and fill in those gaps. Not only is God creating a space of comfort for those who are struggling and those who are marginalized, but God also walks with us who might not be having that experience to be the ones who can reach out and touch. See, the thing with the Beatitudes, the thing with the Gospels, the thing with all of it is that it's not asking us to sit around and wait. This is something else that has been a fallacy of the Christian church. There's not going to be any time when God, as Rambo, was going to come and save everybody. That's not happening. 2,000 years ago, they thought that was what the Messiah was about. And Jesus said, yeah, no, that's not what I'm here to do. 2,000 years later, we want the same thing. We want the superhero to sweep in, because what the superhero does is it absolves us of responsibility. We don't have to swoop in because someone else is going to do it for us. That's not going to happen. Change the dream of the community of God, the life where everybody has abundance, where everybody has enough, where everybody is welcomed and loved and included. None of that happens without us doing the work. All of us, even those in those situations, who, by the way, are already doing the work, because no one is going to be happy and settled in a place of lacking. That just doesn't happen. No matter how many myths we have of the lazy person who doesn't take care of their own needs, that's just not a thing. What is a thing is that we are all part of the community that needs to make a difference. Jesus was just calling out particular aspects of it and underscoring how they already have a place of grace. Now calling on all of us to join in that grace, to bring comfort, to bring justice, to bring healing, to bring the basics of food and housing, to bring wholeness. We are all ultimately in the world of the blessed. Some of us just have to learn we are also to activate that blessedness so that others can live with greater comfort than they currently have. The magnum opus, the greatest work, Jesus lays it out plain. Get it done. Luke might be a little more in your face about it, but Matthew's got the spiritual connection, that this is so grounded in need that we cannot possibly follow Christ without doing the work that we're asked to do. It all goes together.